Now, I understand this, and I understand there's many different professions represented here. You all understand this. Teachers, social workers, university professors, they all tell you what they are doing is important, and they are absolutely right. And I don't want to cut those budgets. I'm not coming in saying we just want to cut. I don't have a choice. We can't go on spending money that we don't have. We have to set our priorities. When I campaigned, I set my priorities, didn't I? You all heard me. Fiscal discipline, limited government, free enterprise. Those three, in that order. We're talking right now in setting a budget and fiscal discipline. If you don't have the money, you can't expand. If you don't have the money in your businesses or in your homes, you might put off that vacation, or you might repair the equipment rather than going out and buying new equipment because you don't have the money. You realize that. In the prior 8 years, we increased our spending. My predecessor increased the spending in Pennsylvania from $22 billion to just about $29 billion in 8 years. What do you think about that number? That's a lot of money. It goes pretty far up into the sky. It goes well above the 250 miles into the sky. We had 6 weeks to make a determination where we would suggest that we cut it to the legislature. A recession kills revenues. But long before the recession, Pennsylvania, our government, we really turned into shopaholics. We're giving money away. And whose money were we using? Was it ours? Not really. It was really our children and our grandchildren. That's what I'm worried about. Sometimes we spent money that we didn't have. Sometimes they spent money that they barely had. And the federal government came along with stimulus monies, sent them to us, and we expanded our budget based upon stimulus money from Washington that was going to end this year. That's how we balanced our budget. The sales tax that you pay, the business taxes that you pay, and the various assorted fees. So at the start of 2008, the revenue dropped, and it dropped by more than $3 billion. But that didn't stop us from spending money. We went and we raided every rainy day fund and one-time accounts that we could possibly take. That $3 billion drop was 198 miles of $1 billion. $1,000,000 drop. The same year, with less coming in, the state increased its spending. Where we dropped by $3 billion, we increased our spending by $1.4 billion. Now that increase in spending, part of it was an inflexible demand of public welfare, the rising cost of basic education, corrections, pensions, and yes, health care. For the next 3 years, two things happened. One, revenue stayed below the pre-recession level, but our spending rose. The budget office, our budget office, mapped it out. If we continued on the trend that we were on, you can see what happens. We will soon spend, if we continue on that trend, $8 billion more than we're taking in. I would assume if revenues don't start catching up or anything. Hopefully you're starting to see some changes. We're starting to see a little increase in revenue. Harrisburg has been living on the giant credit card of our children's future. And if we don't change that, our children are going to be stuck with a debt that we created, and they'll never be able to pay down. They'll never climb out of the debt, and I think they'd leave Pennsylvania and go find somewhere that is fiscally sound. But instead of facing up to reality, the reality that education thinks that it is exempt from a recession, at least in some quarters, the reality that the stimulus money was plugged in where it didn't belong. It was plugged in. The state was putting revenue generated by you all, the state budget, and putting it back into education. And again, that's billions of dollars. That's money we were getting from state revenues that, remember what I said, they were dropping like a stone. Go back and look at that other chart that you have in your hand. Education is one of those inflexible demands. We have to educate our kids, and we want to give them the best education that we possibly can. We have to pay for that education. But we can't pay for it with money we don't have. That's where the illusion of the stimulus funds came in and did its mischief. In 2009, right here, in 2009, the state's share of money for education by the Rendell administration actually dropped. It was filled in by stimulus money and increased by stimulus money. It wasn't increased by our revenues. It was increased by... There was a long-term debt that the federal government has taken on. We were using it in a short-term asset. It was an spending of federal money and even decreased the state's portion of state money. Stimulus money was sold as to be a long-term asset. But this is not, as I said, a long-term asset. Stimulus money was to grow jobs. And if we would have grown jobs, what would we have gotten? Revenue. We need to change that. We used the stimulus money to patch a hole. With $300 million the first year and another $250 million on top of that the second year, we made it look like we were fiscally sound. We balanced the budget. But we were just building this up. We were right at the edge of a cliff. Instead of backing away, we built a diving board and went, phew, let's jump over it. Let's jump over the cliff. Stimulus money is now gone, not coming from Washington. $550 million my predecessor used last year was plugged in, while actually, as I said, reducing the green, reducing what we put in. You heard me talk about a day of reckoning in my budget address, if you listen to that. We are at the day of reckoning. It's right here. It's clear. Some would use a trick to delay what was inevitable. It can't be done. I won't do it. The bill is now due. Now, it took some doing, but my staff and I looked at the budget, looked at basic education and funding, looked at the issue of the stimulus problem. And in the budget that we proposed, and a lot of people were upset about, because we have said we will match revenue to spending. The revenue that we have will be the spending we have. $27.3 billion is what we believe it will be. Our proposal for 2011 takes out the red, because we don't have it. I didn't take it out, the federal government took it out, didn't they? We just don't have that money. However, I want you to look. We actually increased the spending from the state revenues to get back to where we were in 2008 and 2009. Stopping the master's bump. You know what I mean by the master's bump? Teachers get a master's degree, they get a bump in their pay. For some people, that's up to $20,000 in the bump of their pay. A lot of people say it's good to get a master's bump. We can't afford it right now. I'm all for paying our teachers. Northern Lebanon, my wife worked at. Pine Grove, I worked at. She got paid $6,600. She was a breadwinner. I got paid $6,000. Now that was 1972, 73, so it was quite a while ago. And I understand that. But when the money is not coming into the state can't give it to the school districts. So, is to protect the families from a sudden jolt to their property taxes, switching from one wallet, going into that one from the state side, to the local side. We have to cut the spending. What we have to do is spend less. So I am backing a bill to put any property tax increase that goes beyond the rate of inflation on the ballot. So looking in my administration at a whole new model for education funding. We have to look in the long term. I believe we should think of the child, the parent, the teacher. We think in the world of K through 12 that we should give students choice in their schools. Maybe we should take a look at attaching the state subsidy to the students. Let the state side of the money follow the students. Let them carry it to the schools. This will give students and the parents the freedom to pick the best learning environment for them. I think the parents know what their children need better than anybody else. And they know their child's talents and their needs better than any guidance counselor. Maybe it's time to examine how we fund higher education also. If the billions we spent in the past years was supposed to keep tuition down, it didn't. President Spanier was a little upset with me the day I announced my budget. The first thing he said, we're going to have to raise tuition. Very first thing he said, we have to raise tuition. And maybe we need to close campuses. Well, when your business is losing money or doesn't have the funds, do you look to reduce the size of your business? Maybe. You have to balance, right? You don't have somebody coming in giving you more money and more money.